All right, it's 2 o'clock, so we'll begin. What's up, Zay? All right, let's go ahead and we'll begin completing chapter 3. All right, hope you all had a good Labor Day weekend. Did anyone do anything particularly fun, like travel? Rashid, you did something cool? No? Did anyone travel anywhere super cool, like out of the country or? I went out of the country. I went to Louisiana, the deep South, which is a very different country, even within America. Yeah, it's yeah, but it's like it's in the States, but it's different, different, very different. All right, let's talk about a couple of good things we shared last week, and then we'll jump into corporate social responsibility. So we have 3 birthdays recently. All right, Eric Camarillo, James, and Amari. So happy birthday. Well, I don't think we need to sing, but I hope you all have a good birthday. Eric, or IT, where's he at? You got a new guitar, is it in? Nice. What kind of guitar is it? A Strat, you said? It's a good guitar? Sweet. All right. Hope it plays well. All right, Jawad. Is he here yet? So he's got a 45-inch vertical. I looked this up, and it's like top 0.1% of verticals. So that's pretty impressive. All right. Clock keeps moving up. Is she here yet? We celebrated her getting married last week, and now she also bought a house. So that's pretty sweet. Yeah, she's killing it. So I'm gonna let her teach the next class. All right. Let's move on. Let's talk about corporate social responsibility. But just to put this in a context, we finished last Thursday talking about ethics. We talked about how to navigate ethical dilemmas, how ethical dilemmas come about. What's up, Juan? We just put up your 45-inch vertical on the screen, and we all wanted to say kudos, so congrats. All right. So CSR is one type of ethical behavior that organizations engage in. It's more of a comprehensive approach for the organization to act ethically and be good stewards of the community. So we'll talk about what does it mean to be good with CSR and what are some ways we can, as an organization, make sure that we don't get off track with our CSR. Dot, congrats on the house. Very cool. All right, so what is CSR? All right, so we are talking about the triple bottom line here: people, planet, profit, and the ways that the organizations can manage all 3 and not neglect one or the other in order to succeed. All right, so we'll think about CSR as a pyramid. If you reference Carroll's pyramid in your group paper or your presentation, that'll probably get you some bonus points. Any way you can incorporate terminology from the book to show that you've read the book or listened in class and then applied what we've talked about to your classwork, that's great. The good thing about Carroll's pyramid is it helps us understand how these 4 things, so economic, legal, ethical, and there's one more. I forgot in just a sec. I forgot it. We'll show how those 4 things all fit together and how we can balance the 4 to be socially responsible. All right, so it suggests we should be a good global corporate citizen. What do y'all think? What does that mean to be a good global corporate citizen? It's a pretty vague statement. Yeah, Cyrus? All right, that's true. But across the globe, there's a bunch of different laws and cultural expectations and norms. So what do you think more broadly, above the law, what does it mean to be a good global citizen? Can y'all think of Khadijah? Yeah, that's probably one of the better examples is if we're contributing to the betterment of the whole globe, we're not polluting and causing or contributing towards global warming. Are there any other issues that organizations can either positively or negatively impact? Mari? Yeah, yeah, that's right. So we can impact economies even in different parts of the world. What are some bad things organizations can do that can be bad for other parts of the world? Yeah, they can abuse the resources. One, yeah, they can abuse people. One specific example I had in mind that might fall under abusing resources is using cheap labor, like in sweatshops. So if I'm Apple and I have a bunch of sweatshops in another country, that's not being a good global citizen. All right, so that's one aspect, being good for the global society, also being ethical in our practices. And we talked about last week, ethical can mean different things when you think about which stakeholders are affected by our business practices, or even if there's different cultures or societies involved, how do we balance competing cultural values to be ethical? It also involves obeying the law, like Cyrus said, so we're not committing tax fraud. And then making a profit. Making a profit is probably the one we think of the most, because that's when you ask people what is the goal of an organization, a lot of times they say make a profit. But we'll think about how to not neglect the other three of these things as we also make a profit. All right, this is the pyramid. So a couple things I like about this pyramid is it shows us how these four things kind of relate. At the base, the foundation of our pyramid is making a profit. So our economic responsibility as an organization is to contribute to the economic betterment of our local contexts of our country. So we produce good products and we produce them for a cheap price. That's a benefit to society. But then on top of that is our legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibility. And the way Carol, the creator of this pyramid, kind of framed it is like profit's the most important. Then if you can do that, try to be legally responsible, then ethically responsible, and then philanthropically responsible. Can anyone define philanthropic or philanthropy? Yeah, Mari? Yeah, giving back. Usually we think of like donations or, I don't know, doing something to help out your city, like a soup kitchen. Maybe you're helping fund a soup kitchen. All right. Yeah, you're kind of answering my discussion question. Do you see any issues with that? Mari said, isn't it kind of backwards? Like profit is the base, the foundation of the pyramid, and it's saying like do whatever it takes to be profitable. And then once you're profitable, then you can be worried about being legal. So would you reorder it, Mari? Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Amari will do whatever it takes. He'll break any laws to be profitable. Would anyone else rearrange it? This is an opinion question, so if you have an opinion, feel free to share it. Anybody else? We gotta wake up after the long weekend. Connor, you wanna give us an opinion here? Yeah, I think you're kind of saying you're on the same page as Amari. You're reading it from the bottom up. Like, let's make a profit first, and then we'll worry about being philanthropic last. Is that kind of your opinion? All right, cool. Well, there is, as with all things in this class, there's a lot of subjectivity, and it's open to your personal opinion and how you want to run your organization. What we're going to see is that it's most organizations, especially in a capitalist society, they want to make a profit. That's their drive. And the downside of that is that they tend to neglect like philanthropy because they think, oh, that's going to distract us from making a profit. One of the things we want to consider is if it's possible that the two things are not mutually exclusive, that we can be philanthropic, and maybe that can help drive business. If you think about organizations that you might call it virtue signaling, but they're advertising how they give back to the community. Like Tom's Shoe is a good example. Do you know what Tom's Shoe is? Or if you buy a pair, they donate a pair, and that's a pretty cool thing. And they advertise that, and that probably drives up their sales because people think they like to feel like they're doing a good thing and buy a pair of shoes. So we'll think about how we don't necessarily have to sacrifice the top three layers to be profitable. All right. Seems like from the opinions I've gotten so far, we like the pyramid from the bottom up. And we say that it's great to be philanthropic and ethical and legal, but like, let's make a profit first. What argument would y'all make for that case? That like, yes, social responsibility is cool, but like, let's focus on a profit first. Why would y'all argue for that approach? Taha? So why would you argue against social responsibility? What would your argument be? Yeah, Zay? Yeah. It's like money is what gets people motivated and the rest will follow. All right. Hobby? Yeah. Changes like the fundamental essence of why we have organizations to begin with. That's a good point. Do you have something else? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So kind of like Hobby said, the point of an organization is to produce a product or a service. If you live in a Western society where capitalism is the dominant approach, we could argue that as long as corporations try to make the best product for the cheapest, provide the best services, attract the most customers, they're going to create better things for society. And those better things are also cheaper because of the competition. So in the end, we could argue that benefits society by giving us better, cheaper products. All right, the book also tells us that similar to y'all's argument, it kind of goes against the core objective of organizations. It'll distract us if we spend too much time thinking about like, let's be good stewards of the city. That can distract our efforts from being the most efficient and effective organization. The only caveat here, the thing we have to be concerned about if we're making this argument, is that it can sometimes lead us to make unethical decisions for the pursuit of profit. Do you remember we talked about the consequentialist viewpoint that says as long as the ends justify the means, as long as it produces the greater good, then you can do whatever it takes. And sometimes that compromises the minority's well-being, or sometimes it means sacrificing some other stakeholders' best interests. Cool. So it's one thing we have to be careful about. Let's argue the flip side. Anybody argue for social responsibility? Yeah, Connor? Like the right thing? Yeah, so it's like an ethical argument. They're our customers, they're loyal, so I kind of have an obligation to help them out in return. I like that argument. Do you have any other arguments? Remind me your name? Marty. All right, what you got? Yeah. Do y'all notice during Pride Month how many organizations have a Pride flag on their logo? And then as soon as Pride Month is over, it goes away. So you can capitalize on that. That might not be the most ethical way to do it, but it can help your profits. All right. Let's see. I brought up the ethical obligations. One thing we didn't talk about is that sometimes in our pursuit of social responsibility, for instance, the pursuit of making a more green technology, it can lead to innovations that can reduce costs and provide us with a greater good or service. So sometimes the R&D we invest in social responsibility can pay off in a better product. All right, that's just a few arguments for and against. So here's an example the book provides us of social responsibility. Probably one of the most prominent examples today is sustainability and global warming. Okay. There's a lot of research that shows that humans are causing global warming and that a lot of that is from organizations producing their product. Okay, so the Tesla batteries, the production of those batteries, for instance, is really bad for the environment. So we're trying to think of ways to minimize that negative impact, either through innovation or through government regulation. If we are trying to advance corporate social responsibility as an organization, we'll look at any approach we can to try to minimize the negative outcomes. It doesn't mean that Tesla is going to stop making the battery, but they're going to see what they can do to make it more sustainably, perhaps. Cool. All right. There is a lot of research on corporate social responsibility. And a lot of the research shows that it does pay off financially for the organizations. So for one thing, we talked about last week how millennials and Gen Z, those employees value ethical behavior. They're more concerned about global warming, and they have higher well-being and satisfaction if they're in an organization that prioritizes corporate social responsibility. So when we see the word thrive, in order for employees to thrive, they have to feel like what they're doing matters, that they are fulfilled, and they're able to put their best work towards the organization. Okay. Customers also resonate with corporate social responsibility. So if you remember the Volkswagen scandal, when it came out that they were cheating on their emission standards tests, there was a lot of boycotting of Volkswagen. Whereas if we're a company that can, if we can advertise our corporate social responsibility, that tends to help our profits. Okay. There is this one research study on America's most just companies that showed that relative to their non-socially responsible competitors, responsible organizations earn 6% more. All right. Let's talk about one system for helping us ensure corporate social responsibility, and that's corporate governance. This isn't one that was underlined in the slides, but it might be good to know. So the definition of corporate governance is a system of rules, practices, and processes governing a company so the interests of the corporate owners and other stakeholders are protected. One example of corporate governance might be using social audits to look at how are we doing in terms of our socially responsible goals. Okay. There's a couple strategies the book mentions to us. One of them is, well, I mentioned CEO accountability, board composition, CSR contracting. CSR contracting is I think a great specific example of what an organization can do. And that is to motivate the executives, like the CEOs, by saying your incentive packages is tied to our corporate social outcomes. So for example, if I'm a car manufacturer, I might tell my CEO, all right, your bonus is contingent on our emissions going down. And the more our emissions go down, the more your bonus is going to go up. What do y'all think when we talk about board composition? If you read the book, maybe you can have some insights for the rest of the class. If you didn't, take a guess. Like, what do you think board composition has? How does that influence corporate social responsibility? What do you think a good board composition looks like, Adi? Yeah. Yeah. Monty's saying get people on the board who are actually concerned about it. That gets at one of our core principles of management is if we want to create a climate for anything, for example, if we want to create a climate for ethical behavior, we want to have leadership who demonstrates ethical behavior, who will emphasize the importance of ethical behavior, for instance, on their employee evals. That sets the tone from the top down, like we value this. Any other thoughts on composition? Something we'll talk about later in the semester is the demographic makeup of management and board of directors. And there's a lot of research showing that the more diverse the makeup of our board is, the better decisions we make, the less we're prone to groupthink. So think about a board made up of all the people who look the same, who are the same age. They're more likely to overlook certain unethical issues because they can just all agree like, yeah, we're going to do this. But some diversity will help us engage in counterfactual thinking. So considering diverse perspectives. All right, there is an example from the book that I like. So we showed Elizabeth Holmes' picture last week. I don't think anyone raised their hand saying that they recognized her, which is interesting because 5 years ago, this was a really hot scandal. So Elizabeth Holmes is the person pictured here. She founded this company, Theranos. It was a health tech company. And at one point, it was worth $9 billion. And it was because of this technology that she claimed to have created. The technology was they could test one drop of blood and get 30 lab results. So it's pretty innovative, pretty groundbreaking, but it turned out to be a complete, she made it all up. So it was a complete scam. It went on for years where they screwed a lot of investors out of their money. They fooled medical professionals, and probably worse, they tricked the patients into thinking they were getting valid blood tests, and they were not. So she is now in jail. She started her jail sentence pretty recently, actually. The reason this is a good example to look at is that it went on for years. Like she tricked people for a long time. And there are some things we learned in this chapter in terms of ethics and CSR that we should be able to apply to this and think about how can we avoid this if we were on the board of directors. First, let's take a look at how did this go on so long? So they suggest 3 issues here. The first is that the board was selected by connections rather than experience. So Madi was saying the board needs to be made up of people who care about the issue. And you would think with a medical technology company, they would have a lot of doctors or other medical professionals on the board, but they did not. They had a bunch of people who were high-ranking politicians. So it was a bunch of connections. It was based on connections. And the thought process is if we have a bunch of senators on our board of directors, it's going to help us if we have to navigate legislation. Okay, they had 1 medical professional. So that's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is that they never had to prove the effectiveness of the procedure because they were classified as laboratory testing. That avoided any FDA regulation. So at no point for 3 to 4 years did they ever have to say, here's the results of our tests. Look, it's valid. And number 3. So Elizabeth Holmes was a pretty manipulative CEO. She would fire people who spoke up or questioned her. And she also offered financial incentives to the board. So whenever it looked like they were starting to be suspicious of her, she said, here's some extra money, as long as you keep me on as the CEO. Okay, so all these things they suggest are what contributed to her being so successful for so long and not being caught. So I have a question for y'all. If you were, let's do this. We'll move to the next slide once we get some ideas. If y'all were on this board, how would you prevent these issues from prolonging this dilemma? Or how would you prevent something like this from happening at your organization? Yeah, Eric? Yeah. Yes, I like your idea of having a close inspection. Who do you think would run that inspection? Yeah, it's tough. Maybe you're trying to initiate that process and she fires you. I like that idea. You know, you got something. Yeah, no, you're definitely right. Do you have any thoughts on what HR can do? Okay. So HR can talk to people, try to gather some information about the case. The nice thing about HR, I think that's chapter 9, is that we'll see that they have these really structured policies and procedures that are meant to be kind of guardrails against, for example, an abusive CEO. So one HR policy or procedure might be, we're going to create a system where employees can come to us, they can tell us their concerns, and they're not going to be fired. That way they don't have to go to Elizabeth Holmes, they can go to HR, and they're protected by the HR department, in theory. So I like that idea. Any other thoughts? Do you have any ideas based on things we discussed in the previous chapters regarding leadership, having influence over an organization? Amari? Yeah, I was asking a leading question. The original question is, how do we prevent this? The follow-up was, how do we as a leader of the organization prevent this? All right, Mar? Yeah, she had too much power is what you're saying. Yeah, she owned 99% of the stock, so she can make whatever decision she wanted to. So at that point, it's kind of hard to say like, all right, let's rein her in. It's too late. All right. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Tell me your name. All right, what you got? Yeah. Yep, I agree with you. That's tough to do when someone's a founder and CEO. That's kind of the idea behind antitrust laws, and that's more like targeted at organizations, breaking them up from becoming monopolies. In this case, she had a monopoly over the organization, and it was too late to say like, all right, we're going to place limits on you. But I definitely agree with that. I wanted to share some ideas that I had from drawing from chapters 1, 2, and 3. The first, we're not going to learn in class, but it's just to be principled. So if you're Elizabeth Theranos or the CEO of your own organization, making sure that you're not doing whatever it takes just to make the best profit. Second, we'll talk more about this in the HR chapter, but hiring, training, and evaluating employees based on ethics. Like Madi said, hire a good board, but you also want to hire within the whole organization employees who we think will be morally upstanding. We want to emphasize the priority of ethics in our organization. And something we said last Thursday is if you measure something, that is, if you evaluate something, employees are going to pay attention to it. So if you put on their end of year eval, like, hey, I'm going to evaluate you on your ethics, then all of a sudden it becomes important because they want a good end of year eval. We talked about social audits pretty briefly today. Making sure that we have regular and open social audits. So I think it was Eric said, like, have some kind of inspection. If we can do that and make it open and transparent, that'll allow us to shed light on things that might be morally questionable. That might mean that we're just publishing results. So all right, as a company, next week we're going to do a social audit, and then we're going to make those public to the organization the following week. All right, one other example we've talked about before is creating a climate of psychological safety. Do y'all remember, how does that help if we have a psychologically safe environment? What does that enable, Mark? Yeah, well, they get heard, but more importantly, they speak up to begin with. If it's not safe, people are not going to speak up. All right, and then last thing, these last two bullet points are kind of connected. Having a protocol for whistleblowing, I think it was Yannette said, have some HR policies and practices. And this is one. If HR says, here's our formal procedure for you to whistleblow, that'll create a protected system for people to speak up. By doing that, you'll also facilitate psychological safety. All right. Any questions on these or last thoughts? Before I wrap up this chapter, I kind of want to put everything back into context in terms of being ethical as an organization. We focused last week on ethical dilemmas, and today was more specifically about corporate social responsibility. At a higher level, we're trying to do the right thing here as an organization. Okay, a lot of what that boils down to is being ethical as a leader, but also transparent, setting up systems that help you keep yourself and others in check. All right, we'll talk about the career competency skill for chapter 3. So we talked about, well, the things we talked about will help us be more professional, have a better work ethic. The book gives us some suggestions for advancing our work ethic and being more ethical. All right, so a couple suggestions. Reduce your carbon footprint. Foster positive emotions in yourself and others. That's a challenging one. Anyone have any suggestions for fostering positive emotions in ourselves and others? Eric, did you have a thought? What is one thing we can do for the rest of the week to try to make things more positive, either for ourselves or for other people? Yeah, Zay? I like that a lot. Eric? Yeah, having a positive attitude. Tell me your name. No, I know it. Rabisha. All right, what you got? Yeah, so using Headspace. So doing some mindfulness. A lot of times when someone's being a jerk, usually they're not happy about something else. One point I want to follow up on Zay's comment is there's this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was written in like the 1915 or 1920. So it's very, very old. But it suggests ways that we can influence people in a positive manner. And one of the number one recommendations is give people compliments. But the caveat is it has to be sincere. So if you say like, Eric, man, your hair's on point today, looks good. Like if Eric's hair is a mess, he's gonna be like, well, he's just blowing smoke up my butt. But it does look good today. If you can find something about someone that you think like, hey, that stands out, I think that's pretty cool. I like that. Let them know. It takes very little for you to say something that you like about somebody else, but it goes a long way in making their day. So I would encourage you to try to do that. All right, let's get back to this list. Spend some time in nature. That's a cool idea. Get enough sleep. That's pretty hard to do in college. Increase your level of exercise. Cardio exercise does help mental health. So I would encourage you to try that. Expand your awareness of social realities. Fulfill your promises and keep appointments. And then avoid people who lack integrity. One of my favorite shows is Dexter. Have y'all ever seen the show Dexter? That's a good show. Last season, not so good. But there's one of my favorite quotes of all time. It's kind of corny, but one of the characters says, never trust people who lie to you and never lie to people who trust you. And she's swearing off the main character because he lied to her. And it's a pretty strong statement to say, like, you lied to me once, I'm never going to trust you. But in general, try to be truthful, try to expect others to be truthful. All right, some other things we can do. Purchase free fair trade items, purchase items that aren't ethically made or sourced. If you're buying an engagement ring, maybe Deloc got a lab-grown diamond. That's socially responsible versus a real diamond. All right, bring your own grocery bags and then don't buy knockoffs. I actually don't know how that makes you socially responsible, but the book says don't buy knockoffs. Yeah, usually worse quality. Yeah, I guess they'll end up in a landfill sooner if they're cheaper quality. That's a good point. All right. I told y'all when we do 2-day chapters, they're going to be probably sometimes short. This is one of those days. So I'm going to put up attendance in just a sec. On Thursday, we'll talk about the group project. We'll assign groups, and then we'll make a game plan for your group project. So be here Thursday. All right, thanks, y'all. There is an optional selfie today, backed by popular demand. It is not required. But if you really want to have a selfie, you can have a selfie. Now you can skip it. All right, thanks, y'all. See you Thursday.